a flute is not a recorder, which is something that Picard does not know. In this episode of The Measure of an Episode, where it is our continuing mission to explore what makes a Star Trek episode a genuine episode, and not just an episode of television. Masquerading as a Star Trek episode. Masquerading as a Star Trek episode. I wanted to clean one of those. I'm Paul.
Masquerading. I'm Jonathan. And we used 3 criteria to determine the Star Trek-ness of the Star Trek episodes. And the first one is there something sci-fi inherent to the plot? In other words, is there a sci-fi conflict or problem that has to be solved? And finally, is there an ethical or moral dilemma that has to that is woven through like a tapestry in the plot?
And this week, we watched The Next Generation Season 6, Episode 19, Lessons. And in this episode, Jean-Luc Picard goes down to his farm to meet his brother, where they talk about wine.
No!
And other things. No!
And they fight in the mud. And it was a great episode. In the mud. Yeah. Totally different from how I remembered it 30 years ago.
Well, how I remembered Lessons going is Captain Picard falls for a new head of the Stellar Science Department, but has misgivings when he's forced to assign her to a dangerous mission. Who actually does not happen. Riker assigns her to the dangerous mission.
Oh, yeah.
And I guess he okays it. I guess everything kind of has the okay from Picard, especially when it happens in front of him.
Well, yeah. I mean, he said, I have complete confidence in your decisions, which that also was very weird that Riker was assigning all the positions as if...
I guess he's the personnel guy.
Well, right. No, I get that part. But it was as if they didn't know what they were supposed to be doing. And I feel like this was the first episode that I've seen that, you know, like... Picard usually says, you know what you're supposed to do. Okay, let's get to it, or something like that. Or make
remember, he was also in that episode where they bring on... what was it? Oh, Chain of Command, where they bring on the unlikable new captain for the Enterprise.
Yep.
And they outline, or they highlight that Riker is kind of in charge of personnel.
Right.
So we have seen it. I mean, we have seen it, I guess, in less... I mean, this is probably the most we've seen it in an episode, where nothing happens.
That's the thing. So I don't know if you want to spoil it now or not, but this was not a Star Trek episode.
It almost was. It was very close. I guess I could try and force fit it, but I'm not going to. Because I don't want people to think that they can keep making these episodes.
Well, I mean, they talk about stellar cartography in the beginning, but has like there was sci-fi discussion, but in no way was it related to the plot. And then there was the evacuation at the end, but that could have been any kind of evacuation. Like this episode literally could have been transplanted into any other ensemble cast show, and it would have worked just fine. But the thing about this episode, which I thoroughly enjoyed, and I think that you didn't like, was 6 seasons in, they've earned the ability to do this. We know the characters, and they could have an episode like this where it was just about seeing a character kind of out of their element and just seeing them grow in a way that you would not be able to see in like the first or second season or in a singular character show. I
mean, it does check the box of morality. There was definitely a very overt sense of morality woven through this episode.
Yeah,
and so I guess it got halfway there in this sense. But yes, you're right. I guess they sort of earned. I don't know if earned is the right word, but they've I suppose you could say graduated into getting more granular in the exploration of these characters. But I don't... Okay, so let me say that the beginning of this episode was the best part, where nothing's happening on the bridge. Data's just sitting there meditating, you know.
Yeah.
And
just calculating.
Picard walks in. Yeah. And Picard walks in, and he's got the famous jacket on that I'm sure everybody wore or got their version of for Halloween when that came out. I don't know when the jacket came, but anyway, it's a famous jacket. And this is my favorite part because he comes in. It seems to be either late at night or early in the morning. It's not clear. He's not in a robe, so he's not in his leisurely time.
Right.
But he comes in and he's like, I want to do this. Oh, stellar cartography. They're doing something. It was very just... It's sort of going against what I normally praise for Star Trek episodes, which is we get right into the action.
Yeah.
But on the opposite end of this, I love it when we just get to see a snapshot of just regular day-to-day stuff on the Enterprise when it's done well. because they had this whole thing about stellar cartography. They're running an experiment, and Picard we're just getting a sense of, oh, this must be what it's like when people aren't shooting at the Enterprise.
Right.
Or,
right.
People aren't melting into the walls. Like there actually is a normalcy. No matter
Where
how
nothing is
brief,
available.
there is a normalcy. Yeah, yeah, exactly. And it was an interesting little what's going on in stellar cartography? What could be happening? And that's where I thought it was actually going. I thought there was something that he was not privy to. There's going to be some overarching mystery as to why they're running this experiment in stellar cartography that is taking over all of the resources of the ship, but they can't tell Picard why, and even Data knows. And I was like, oh, Data's going to be the key to this episode.
And you were way off.
Boy, was I wrong. But that was my favorite part of the episode, was this little 2.5 minute segment. 2.5 minute. Did I say 2.5 minute segment? I don't know what I said, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. It was about 2.5 minutes.
Okay.
But the thing that I liked too was, that she explained, why everything was shut down. He said, like, what possible reason do you have for shutting down all of these things that everybody should be using? She's like, it's 3:00 in the morning. Nobody should be awake right now. Although, and I reject the idea that there would be a commander, and she's a commander. What's her name? Or Commander, not Mimi Rogers. That they would not. This would be their first time meeting. I reject that idea that Picard would not have met her on some even superficial level. That, hey, this is the head of this new department called stellar cartography. You should probably get to know her. She's going to be on your ship for a while. Well, right. I mean, he may have been he probably knew her profile. Like he looked at all of her accommodations before commendations. Before she came aboard. He probably approved all the personnel, or Riker did, which is also possible. But then it could also have been kind of like the time travelers, the people in stasis, where they just they came on board, and he's like, I don't have time for this, and never bothered to introduce himself to her until he had a problem, and then had to go find out who this person was who had the audacity to shut these things down. So for the record, Picard could not give two shits about stellar cartography and time travelers from the distant past. Although he did say, like, he wants to reach out to the head archaeologist on whatever planet and talk to them. I heard you found remnants of partial stone that existed. I'd like to look at this piece of rock, but I have to deal with this problem. These time travelers who are alive and living are on the ship, and I have to... Right. Many apologies. I'll be there to look at the rock soon. Yeah. In the meantime, let me just shoot their ship. Blast it out of the sky. We can move on. I have to execute some people from the past. But once we're done with that, we'll be on our way at Warp 9. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's entirely possible. They were never heard from again. That is true. I mean, they would be famous. Okay, we've right. I know. Sorry. So I'm not going to go down. Yeah. I'm not going to. Don't need to dig it up like an archaeological dig. Okay, so he meets Commander Not Mimi Rogers, and he's invited to a concert, a Data violin concert. Oh, that's right. And so they set that up, and then we cut to Picard having dinner with Crusher, and then they have we get the impression that he likes this new commander, Not Mimi Rogers, and so he says we should hurry up and get to the concert, and and they leave a dinner which had obviously started 2.5 minutes earlier. Yep. Like they just sat down. He's like, well, we should get there. What they didn't show. What was obviously cut for time was them standing in line outside of the concert 2.5 hours before the concert started. It's like, we don't want to be late. And here's a question. Why is it done in 10 forward? Why not in the holodeck where they could set it up to actually have a stage or, an amphitheater? Like, I can't imagine that would be super expensive to rent out an amphitheater. I mean, it's probably more expensive than just using the set they have. So that probably answers it. Right. But you're totally right. Why don't they use the holodeck? Maybe because stellar cartography was using the holodeck for some reason. Right. Yeah, they're running a program. Yeah. So I have to say about this concert that Data gives. So number one, Data, or I should say Brent Spiner, is the best violin mimer I've seen ever. I don't think he plays violin, but he totally sold it. I mean, he looks like he's playing it. Yeah. And sometimes when you see actors trying to play instruments, they do a pretty bad job. Even in one of the greatest music movies ever, Amadeus, even the guy playing Mozart, and he was not a piano player, and they put him through a bunch of
piano lessons, and he still looks like crap when he tries to play the piano on screen. Brent Spiner just looks like he's a natural player. I thought it was amazing.
Now,
this is another reason why we love Data.
Right, but this is also coming from somebody who does not play the violin, correct?
I don't play the violin, but I've seen many people play the violin.
Right.
And so I have a sense of what the technique looks like and what the technique does not look like. And by the way, the person playing the cello is definitely a violin or a cello player. The cello player definitely plays violin. I don't know about the cello.
So close-ups on Data and his performing. When you did not see Data's face, it was not Data.
Right.
Okay.
And the same thing for Commander Not Mimi Rogers. When they didn't show her fingers, but they went to actually great lengths to sell that she was actually playing the piano. Because they have a shot where it's on her face, or rather, no, it's a close-up of the fingers actually playing piano. And it's definitely somebody who knows how to play the piano. And then they do this bit where they pan across the side of the piano, and it's a cut, then they pan up, and it's her, actually, it's Commander Not Mimi Rogers playing. And so they really wanted to sell that she could play the piano. And it was interesting that they spent, I guess they had a lot of time since nothing actually happens in this episode.
Right, there were no special effects that they need to put in, yeah.
Yeah, so they had the time to do this kind of crazy cut. So I just thought it was interesting that they spent so much time. Maybe that's what makes this a Star Trek episode, is their attention to detail on this. Yeah, that's exactly how I felt through this whole episode. But anyway, it's neither here nor there in terms of what the episode is about. But it just was interesting to me that first of all, it was a long sequence,
right,
in 10 Forward with this concert, and I guess they felt that it sort of is the foundation of Picard falling in love with her, and so they really needed to sell it. It couldn't feel chintzy.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. Like this episode, I don't feel like could have happened early on because we wouldn't have been connected with the characters, and this episode would have felt like it dragged on forever, even more so than it already did? Question mark. I mean, there were a couple scenes. So there were actually things where when they happened, it was. It kind of gave me the idea that this episode could have been a hub of other character episodes about things, like, LaForge standing in the engineering room and kind of telling Data, do you hear music? And I was like, right. if this was not if we did not know the source of that music, like in any other episode, Geordi hearing music would have been an alien from a phantom dimension, or something that needed
or the
to
computer trying to communicate with them or something like that.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And so like just the fact that it was just this little throwaway line and it never was brought up again. I was like, I want to follow that story. Like Geordi trying to find the source of the music and him, it disappearing, and then him like going to see Counselor Troy and thinking that like trying to figure out what him hearing music might have meant.
I think I'm in love with this music. Geordi, we've talked about this.
Is that your Deanna?
Yeah, it sounds a lot like Picard. He actually went to Picard first. He can confide in Picard, and then he goes to Troy, which I'll do later. I'll do Troy later.
Well, we all wanted to.
Wait a minute. So she shows up at Picard's place, and we know that he's being leisurely because why, audience? Because he's wearing his robe.
But he wasn't. He wasn't though. He was. I mean, he was wearing a blouse for sure.
A very low cut blouse.
But yeah, but it was but he had pants on. He had pants and a belt. It was very it was almost Renaissance-y. So
you just come from another interesting episode.
Right.
To rest up. I understand that there was a decision made early on that music is going to be the construct of how we make Picard fall in love. It's going to be the structure that we base all this on.
Right.
So I understand it. They made that decision. But man, do I hate all the music stuff. I hate it. He said...
I wanted to ask, during the second arpeggio, the first movement, I noticed that you played an F minor chord instead of a diminished D.
You're a musician. What's your instrument? We should play sometime.
No. I'm just an amateur.
Oh, yeah, I'm an amateur? Like, no, you're not an amateur at that point.
No, yeah, exactly. And the whole, I've never seen a flute like that. And he should have said, that's because it's a recorder, not a flute. And I just hate it. And I'm wondering, do I hate it because I am a little closer to it being a musician, and so therefore I can see all the cracks that are normal. Or, for example, if I were a stellar cartographer, would I be just as frustrated, just in a different way? Does it frustrate you even? I just don't know. I don't know if I'm being a douche about this.
Well, I mean, you kind of are, but it's because you know music so well. And that's why I didn't take it as a joke. I figured stellar cartography wasn't a thing, but the question is valid. Like, am I being more frustrated by this than somebody who is not as musically inclined because I am so musically inclined? And the answer is yes. Like, you can see, I am not nearly as musically inclined as you are. And so
but you're a musician.
Well, right. But so to hear Picard say
You played an F minor chord instead of a diminished D.
that is not somebody who just dabbles in music on his recorder.
Although he did dabble in music on his recorder for 50 years. So I suppose dabbling does get you somewhere over the course of 50 years.
But he can't play chords on a recorder.
It's a good point. But does it come across as disingenuous to you?
That part, yes. The part where they were in his quarters did not come across that way to me.
Do you think he calls them his recorders? Huh? Yeah. I think he calls them that.
No.
I'll be in my recorders. See, even when I say it legitimizes it. When I
Right.
use my Picard voice.
Right. What does Troy say to him?
Well, I can do an impression of Picard doing an impression of Troy. So you're saying that you were on board with all the stuff when she shows up and she plays her touch piano thing, and he's playing his recorder, and there's that whole scene. That was okay for you.
Yeah, I mean, well, I guess the other part of it too would have been, well, again, he's been playing for 50 years, so I could see him wanting to learn something the way you're supposed to play it, and her coming along and saying like, no, just loosen up and just kind of feel the music and have a little fun with it. And he knows that recorder well enough that he knew what note he wanted to play and could open up like that. Especially, I think also having his number one be Riker, who is very much into jazz. He would be.
Why don't they jam?
Trombone and recorder, such a good combo.
Is it? Well, I mean, they would find a way. First of all, if they wanted to, is it because neither of them have a vagina, and that's why neither of them are interested in playing with one another?
I would assume so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I mean, they could absolutely do a trio combo. Because Data can play anything, so it would be Data, Riker, and Picard.
He can play anything. That's true, but he chooses to play only the violin.
Right.
Very interesting. Can we talk about Data a little bit more? I would like to talk about Data.
Well, he's the one who plays the lute, though, right? In the Robin Hood episode.
I think that's Geordi.
You think it's Geordi? Okay. I thought he smashed it for Data and then apologized.
No, I don't know. We haven't gotten to that episode yet, but I'm pretty sure it's Geordi.
Okay.
But we'll have to find out.
Yeah.
We'll have to find out.
Yep. It'll be for my 50th birthday.
Yeah. And they find then Commander Darren takes Picard to find the most uncomfortable place, play music on the ship, and they go play music there for a while.
Yep.
And of course, we would be remiss in not acknowledging the much more entertaining scene on YouTube where they replace it with terrible playing, and it plays out so well because they play the whole scene when they get there.
Yes.
Right. They give you the setup. It's not just they don't just cut to them playing. That wouldn't be funny.
Right. But yeah,
they talk about how
the rollout of the Casio keyboard. Yep.
The thing from like the miniature version of the thing from Big.
Yep.
It's the setup. I've never heard you play with such feeling before.
Yes. Well, and when he plays, she's like, it's beautiful.
Yeah, it's great. It's amazing.
It is. It's so good. And it's such a ridiculous thing. I mean, unless he hasn't seen that particular keyboard before. Like, we already have roll-up keyboards, and we have small keyboards that can play a whole range of instruments and music. So for him to be fascinated by this roll-up keyboard in a way of it's a brand new instrument was just.
It doesn't. I mean, I thought she was going to walk over and she will have materialized a piano in his room from however crazy, some sort of stellar cartography tech,
right,
or something like that. Like she was going to walk over and the grand piano is going to be sitting there.
The people. This is so great. The people who designed it, who sketched it out, and the people who designed it, who built it, are so unfamiliar with music that they designed it to not have the same key program, like key progression as a piano. I don't know if you saw that or not.
Is it not?
Yeah.
No, is it not? Oh,
it's not 3-2-3-2, like, or however many would be on there. I don't know. I didn't see it either, but just the notes about it were the choreographer, essentially, the person who helped not Mimi Rogers play in a way that made it look like she knew what she was doing for those few scenes, was so mad that like he basically had to revise how to play it on a piano to make it work on the instrument that he was given.
Yeah, I get it. I'm being douchey about the whole music stuff, but it just, I don't know. They seem to have gone to pretty great lengths to make it believable. So I give them credit for that.
I also liked the dynamic. I mean, it didn't happen a lot, but just the dynamic with Riker and Picard, you know, because it is a very tricky situation to try and date somebody who I would imagine even more so on a ship. Like, I would imagine it's just not allowed.
Who you outrank, right?
Yeah. You know, but being in space space has to have different rules because you're out there indefinitely. So there just has to be some basic protocols about it.
Yeah, they say that when they are recruiting people to go to Mars, that you have to get along with these people. You can't just be good at your job and that's it. I mean, I read something that they'd rather people got married. They'd rather people know each other already and have a consistent background of getting along. Because if you have nowhere to go,
right,
sort of like being seasick on a boat in the middle of the ocean. So I can understand that they would allow this type of thing. I would think that he says there's no protocols, but I would think that there would be something about a captain dating. I guess she's a commander. So it's not like he wants to date an ensign.
Right.
22-year-old ensign.
It's not that he doesn't want to.
Yeah, or that he doesn't. It's just this one is special.
Right. That is something that the writers specifically did with not Mimi Rogers, was they wanted to make sure that she was age appropriate and she had more life experience and she wasn't just somebody that he was sexually attracted to, but he like connected with her on a deeper level. And that's why they picked the actress that they did.
Yeah. And I got the impression that I don't think they didn't have that moment that they have in a lot of these things where he sees her for the first time and immediately is taken with her or falls in love with her. There may be a little bit of that, but he seems to fall in love with her upon seeing all of the things that she can do.
Right.
Like his panties don't drop really until the concert, and he's already interacted with her, I think, at least once by that point.
Yeah.
So I think they make out at this point. They've made out by this point, and Picard brings Troy into his ready room and proceeds to hit on her, and then immediately has to pivot because she says, "Oh, are you talking about with your relationship with Commander Darren?" He's like, "Yes, that's exactly what I'm talking about."
Oh, you know about that? Then yes, that is what I'm talking about.
Yeah. And not that he was actually just hitting on Troy. You know, Troy, is it okay for someone like you and maybe someone like me to get together, let's say, tomorrow night? You're not going to stop me? I'm just going to keep going with the scenario?
Yeah, I'm just waiting to hear what Troy says.
But she gives her permission.
By saying...
No, not yet.
No,
not yet!
All right.
So Riker comes in to talk to Picard about this because not Mimi Rogers, they have a dispute about a personnel transfer, and Riker's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And so Riker comes in to talk to Picard about a girlfriend swap. And Picard, he immediately has to pivot when Picard says, "Is this about me and Commander Darren and having a relationship and it made you feel uncomfortable?" He's like, yes. That's exactly what I'm talking about. And so that happens, which is actually, I thought, was really well done.
Yes.
But it was funny because I didn't immediately, when Commander Not Mimi Rogers talks to Riker in the hallway, and he says, you don't understand the situation you're putting me in. I didn't even do the math that he felt like she was asking for special permission because she's dating Captain Picard. I didn't even do that. Like I was just like, oh, she's just being annoying to him. She's making it hard for him to do his job of keeping everybody happy and managing the personnel in an effective way. But that's not what was. I totally missed the subtext, or maybe it wasn't even. It was just text of the scene. It was only later brought up to me in that conversation.
Well, yeah. I mean, it all felt very natural, even if you did understand how it was going. Like, it made sense that Riker would then go to complain to Picard about, hey, your side piece is kind of taking advantage of this. What was interesting to me was it genuinely felt like Riker was reading more into her request than was actually there.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think she was asking for special attention.
Yeah, no, not at all. You know, because she straight up said, like, I shouldn't have asked him first, and I apologize for that, but he would be really good for the team, and he seemed to be very happy there.
Right.
So
yeah.
yeah.
And he seems to handle it. But then Picard and not Mimi Rogers are having dessert, or about to have dessert, and he pitches the girlfriend swap to her at that dinner.
I think you and I watched 2 very different episodes.
Thank God that dessert was interrupted, because it could have just gone terribly. Well, for many reasons. Number one, he didn't get to pitching it to her. And number 2, we didn't get to watch them have dessert, right? I think we've seen too many meals by the time the scene comes in.
That was the other thing, too. I was kind of feeling that way. Like, when the dessert was interrupted, I think I said, as like, literally, oh, thank God, because I thought, because of how, like, slowly paced this character episode was, I genuinely thought that we were going to just see this little moment with the 2 of them of, like, having dessert together and just them being a couple. And so I was like, wow, the episode is really taking advantage of this.
Yeah, but I was just delighted that we didn't have to watch them do this. That we didn't have to get some made-up story about a dessert that was just, a banana split.
So anyway, so it's interrupted.
Yeah, it's interrupted, and then the episode starts.
It's just like 45 minutes in.
And they have this really interesting scene in the conference room where they meticulously set up how Commander Not Mimi Rogers is going to perish, right? They give you exactly all the beats. It's like, well, if we don't protect this part, then people could die. And if you have to put something here, and then you're just going to get burned alive.
And they have to do it within a certain time frame, otherwise the storm will be too strong. They won't be able to get everybody out. Yep.
They set the scene, they set the clock, and they push us off. We're ready to go.
And then no surprises the rest of the way.
Yeah. There's a cool visual moment in this scene this is where I thought maybe it could be a Star Trek episode, which is the establishing shot of the surface, where it's a static shot, but we see the team working on the surface of this planet. And then in the background, we see the firestorm or whatever.
Uh-huh.
And we see in the foreground, these sensor shields things that they've set up. And it's just a really neat looking shot. And I thought, oh, this singular shot might very well make this a Star Trek episode, because they thought it out so well. It wasn't just them, because they've immediately then cut to the typical kind of set stage outdoor thing where it's just like a rock. They're sitting in front of a rock with some sand,
right?
Right.
Those are redone effects.
Damn it! Redone? Really?
Yeah.
What did they look like? And why did they redo them?
They just spiced them up a little. Like, they just cleaned them up, made it a little bit sharper. Like, I guess I'd have to go back and see the comparison, but yeah, that establishing shot was re-edited.
Okay, so the whole thing happens, and Picard thinks that Not Mimi Rogers is dead.
Yeah.
They cut to him in his room, and he's sitting on the couch, and in the foreground is the flute, and in the background is Picard. And he turns over and looks at the flute. It's still open in its case. And there's this really neat, emotive shot where the camera, it's a glass table, and so Picard walks over to the table, the camera goes underneath the table, and you see the case juxtaposed next to Picard, and he's kind of looking at it. And they had a decision to make in this moment. There's 2 ways they could have ended this scene. The first way is the trite hack way, which is he picks up the flute and plays a simple little tune in elegy of her death.
Plays Frere Jacques. Yep.
Right? Exactly. That's the crap way. The way that they did it was so great because in a single motion, they explain how he's feeling, and they explain that, oh, he's done with music.
Yep.
That was it.
Mm-hmm.
This whole literally lifetime of memories and thoughts and emotions that he had attached to this flute have now been flushed down the toilet.
Well, yeah, because they're now attached to this other gal who's dead.
Well, they're just intrinsically linked,
right.
And so therefore he does not want the pain of even revisiting the old life because it would be too painful now.
Yep.
So, but they communicated all of these things in a singular movement of him flipping the case closed.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that's awesome.
Yep.
What a great moment. And that far exceeds any kind of television probably of the time in terms of storytelling.
Yeah.
And then they ruin it.
And then they ruin it.
They ruin it.
Yep.
They ruin it in so many ways. First of all, she's not dead, which is like, okay, I get it.
Right.
And we've talked about this before. It's too sad.
Yeah.
This is not a sad show.
Right.
This is a Star Trek show.
So yeah, that I was willing to accept. Yay, she's alive, awesome. But they even kind of held it a little bit longer because he went to the transporter room and all of the survivors they found were beamed aboard and walked by and he didn't see her and that was it. Like the room was empty. And so he started to turn around and magically transported? Like why didn't the transporter guy, say
because Spock. It was Spock. He was like, one more moment, one more try. I can get them.
Yeah. I had to beam them down. I'm going to beam them back up.
Yeah. 2 or 3 times is the minimum when I'm running the transporter.
But yeah, so they tried to do the fake out with the audience of like maybe she's alive. Oh no, she's dead. But wait, there's more.
Yeah, they tantricized it as much as they possibly could.
Yeah. Well, and then she beams on board, and like you can kind of see the relief in his face, but he does nothing as she walks by.
He does nothing.
He just watches.
But
her.
I liked that.
Yeah.
That was great. I liked it because Picard would not rush and shoulder roll into her arms. Right? He would not do that.
No, true.
He would have an internal moment of relief that I think we got enough of. I think any more it would have felt like a little home on the prairie.
Right, but as captain,
house.
he would have helped her. I feel like.
Yeah, she is kind of struggling with it, and he doesn't even say like one more. Like he doesn't call. It's like we have one more survivor, right? You could see that being the one thing that they make him say. I guess that they could have had him say, or 2 more survivors.
Right.
There are 2, and that was it. And you go to commercial on that. But you're right.
So, but then the actual ruin of that moment.
They ruin it again by Picard spelling out every moment of that scene to her. In the next scene.
Oh, you missed it. I had such an amazing emotional moment. let me explain it to you.
The camera went under the table and everything.
And I closed the box.
It's very poignant. I mean, imagine if that had been how the episode had ended. It would have won the Emmy, right?
Yeah.
And no, but they had to give it to us again. They had to beat us in the head with it.
I mean, they definitely had to give us the happy moment. That would have been so like are we
They had 2.
Well, right, but like are we
go ahead.
going for the happy moment or are we going for the Emmy? Like, one of them we can for sure hit, the other one is a gamble.
Yeah. Well, they didn't gamble.
They did not. They definitely
did not
played
gamble.
it safe. I mean, which is TNG in general, which is fine.
I was so disappointed because I was like, "Oh, this is going to culminate to something."
Right.
That it's not just somebody getting reassigned.
Yeah.
Or
yeah, right?
Right? It actually will hold. I was like, "Oh, I kind of feel sorry for Picard now."
Yeah.
Like when he walks out of sickbay and Riker says, "Yeah, she's probably dead."
Right.
I felt it for him.
Yeah.
This was loss, and he walked out, and he doesn't say anything.
Right. Yeah.
And they set him up for that shot, for that next scene that they immediately crap on.
Can you like just no music, just dead silence. He closes the box and it just cuts to black and it says, executive producer Gene Roddenberry or whatever.
Right. For your consideration.
Right. Yeah. I mean, obviously they couldn't do it because it is episodic and we had to know that like she was okay and the character couldn't have such a huge, just left turn in his personality and demeanor to have that kind of loss for them.
But effectively, it's the same thing. She leaves the ship regardless.
Right, but she's
they
alive.
Reset at the end. Yeah. But we never see her again.
I know.
Although I will say that it does seem that at the end of this episode, I had this thought that I think this happens way too often to believe it's not by accident. Okay, this scenario where Picard falls in love with somebody and for some reason or another, they have to part ways by the end of the episode.
Right. And
too much this is happening for it to be an accident. I believe that he has side pieces all over the galaxy. Because if you think about it, we've got command, because he always tags it with like, we could arrange shore leave together. I have some shore leave coming up. We could meet up somewhere. And he says that to every woman he encounters. Says it to this lady, not Mimi Rogers. The insurrection lady. He ends the movie the movie Insurrection. He says the same exact thing to her. And then the lady that he meets on Ryza in that episode where there's some sort of mystery when he finally takes a vacation. He meets a girl who's 20 years younger than him and they have an adventure together. I think he says the same exact thing to her.
I mean, he's also got a legacy to live up to, being the captain of the Enterprise.
You mean as a player? Like a reputation as a player?
Yeah. And he's got big shoes to fill and big cod pieces to fill with Kirk. and other things to film.
And imagine the competition with Riker. If this is true.
She beams off and he turns to Riker. That's one more for me.
Yeah. Checkmate.
Your move, Will.
But I think not it just didn't hit the mark for a proper Star Trek episode.
No, it didn't. I mean, the character was there, and if I think you're right. If they had started with the planet kind of at the beginning, and her being in stellar cartography, like allowed them to predict something that they knew was coming, or that they allowed them to predict what was going to happen to the planet, and so that's why they had to beam down. That's a little bit more sci-fi. But yeah, there wasn't anything science fiction inherent to the plot in this episode to make it proper Star Trek.
Yeah.
And Brandon Braga actually agrees. He says he wishes that they had been able to include more sci-fi into the romantic side of things, much in the way that they did with Aquiel. Surprisingly.
Did they?
So he really felt like this episode missed the mark in that respect, but he did think that it was a great episode, just as far as Picard and the character.
Yeah, I guess I suppose they probably spent a long time developing how they were going to make it believable that Picard would fall in love with this lady.
And this was actually a season 3 story that was tossed around, but it wasn't very interesting for the writers at the time. And then when they were struggling to come up with ideas for season 6,
yeah,
they actually found this one again, and they were like, "Huh? Could be."
Yeah. But the fun part about this episode to me, though, is we have a lot of different situations where it is just a snapshot of what it is like to live on the Enterprise.
Yes. Well, yeah, I mean, just seeing the day-to-day, there wasn't really anything sci-fi inherent to the day-to-day of things, aside from stellar cartography,
really.
But that was just her job. Like, it could have been anything.
Which is just a 10 by 10 room, apparently, stellar cartography.
Well, until the movie, yeah.
Until the movie. The movie is amazing. Even in Voyager, they're, what do they call it? Astrometrics.
Mm-hmm.
Which is the same thing. That's got to be the same, just a cooler name.
I mean, it's almost like Astrometrics should have been the Enterprise one, and stellar cartography should have been the Voyager one. Because that's literally what they're doing. They are charting the maps of the stars in this brand new quadrant.
Right. Making maps of stars.
We should call that something.
I mean, it would what would that be called? What could we call that?
Star maps. This is the
I'll be in star maps if you need me.
Star map room.
I like that he tries several different words and leaves the room and tries it out with himself. And they settled on stellar cartography. All right. Well, so this is going down on our list as not. It's a no.
It's a no.
Definitive no.
Yeah.
Okay.
Again, a great episode. I think like if you are watching the series, this is not one that you should skip, especially if you've been watching from the beginning.
What we hope is happening is that people are listening to our show chronologically. And so therefore they will know what episode we're going to be watching in the future so they can watch it along with us. I think in order to really enjoy our podcast, you had to have seen the episode. Maybe that's not true? I don't know if that's true.
I don't think it is because we have heard from a listener who said that the episode that we talked about, his wife enjoyed our discussion so much that then they went to go watch it.
What a great compliment!
I know.
Too.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, dear listener and wife. All right, what are we watching next?
The original series, Season 3, Episode 17, That Which Survives. After Enterprise landing party members, wow, that's a lot of
adjectives.
What would you call those? Yeah. After Enterprise landing party members beam down to investigate a geologically interesting planet, their ship is hurled across the galaxy.
I like hurried.
It's hurried. Move along. Move along.
Come on.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
That actually sounds kind of cool.
Didn't we just do a TOS episode? I'm fine with it, but wasn't our last one? Yeah, it was whatever that one was. All right. Well, cool.
I think we've been ping-ponging a little bit.
Right?
Yeah, this one sounds really good. I'm happy. I'm glad.
I wonder, like, if it's literally just hurled across without any any explanation, then that would not be a sci-fi element because people lose ships all the time. So
it depends on what they encounter.
I know,
as
right,
they're
right,
hurled
yeah,
across the game.
yeah. Depends on whether or not that's the conflict. So cool. Well, let's go watch it.
All right.